There are more than 150 horse breeds in the world. The development of each of them has been influenced by man. In this series, we trace the origins of 5 breeds, finding out how they've evolved and developed over the centuries. And what's their role in modern day society? Are they still used as the original horsepower? Or have they become a much loved pampered pet? From India to Iceland, from the Americas to Africa, we travel the world meeting the different horse breeds to discover more about this incredibly intelligent, loyal animal. In this episode, we travel to North America and spend time with Mustangs on the West Coast. We meet Monty Roberts, the original horse whisperer, and Wild West Taylor, a pioneering science-based trainer, and begin to understand how the horse's brain works. What makes the Mustang so famous and loved across the world? We gain an intimate knowledge of why this loyal, hardy horse continues to be so popular. Its character, history, and enduring appeal. This is Equus Worldwide, USA. It was thought by the early settlers that the Mustangs were wild and crazy. But in fact, once you've backed them, they're loyal, strong, and a very hardy horse, which proved invaluable for the early settlers in the Wild West of America.
Typically the size on these Mustangs, you're going to be in the 14 hand range, up to 14.3 and into the 15s.
The one thing that people really tend to draw to for the wild horses is their feet. Their hooves are really hardy and seem to have fewer hoof problems than, say, domestic horses do. And they're really smart. Sometimes they're smarter than the people that adopt them. They have to be smart to live on the range. And once they trust wholeheartedly.
They're fast. Yeah, they're not race horses, but they're sound. They have the best feet on the face of this earth for Equus, the flight animal. They are not sensitive horses. They're sensitive when they're wild, but you can gentle them to the extent that touching them is a pleasurable experience for them. Not like some of the breeds. The Arab is a very sensitive horse, and they've bred it to be more sensitive over the millennium.
They're very strong boned, they have very strong feet, they have very strong minds. They already know how to be a horse out in the wild, and I love training and working with them because we're not trying to teach them how to do anything as much as we're just getting the fear out of the way so we can build this relationship with them. And once that fear is out, these guys can be some of the best horses for all types of ranch work or competitive work, trail riding, recreational and even professional in packing or trail maintenance work. So they're just an all-around versatile, hardy, strong physically and strong mentally horse.
The Mustang is just one branch of the wild horses that left Africa and went up through Europe. Some wound up in Iceland and Norway. Certainly a lot of them ended up in the UK. And they came across the ice bridge to North America, a few, but most of the ones that came to North America came with the Spaniards across on a boat in the 1600s and 1700s.
They're a mix of kind of everything that was going on culturally, socially, and geographically at that time. Some of the Mustangs are pioneer horses that were turned out, or Indian horses that have been out forever, or even clear back in the 1500s of the early Spanish settlers that came here.
Spain looked to the United States as a growth potential. California was owned by Spain, and they made a capital in Monterey, California. And so when they came to the western part of the United States, they brought their horses with them, barb horses. And when you asked them what they were, Mustangos, they would say. Mustangos. It means wild thing. And they were wild. And the Indian people, the Native Americans, they heard them calling them Mustangos, and they said Mustang. Mustang, they were. And the Indians would see some get loose and then they would wind up with them, wouldn't they? They didn't have horses. But they realized that horses would help them hunt, would help them transfer the family, even pull carriages and drag hides on the ground. And some of those got loose and they started to breed in the wild. Here in California, Nevada, Arizona, all up the West Coast. Millions, 2-3 million Mustangos. My name is Monty Roberts. We're in Solvang, California.
Monty Roberts, famous for spending his life learning about the breed, works out of his stunning ranch, Flaggers Up Farms in California. His reputation as a renowned horseman has endeared him to figures far and wide, including the likes of Her Majesty the Queen, for whom he continues to back 1,000 horses a year.
Here we are, here on the first day that I met her, and that's the first horse I started for the royal family. 4 days later, the Queen Mum came to watch her being ridden through the gardens. And the Queen was so struck that in 4 days, a totally untrained horse could be ridden through the gardens perfectly relaxed that way. So that began a relationship that continues today. And her endorsement of my work has made all the difference in the world. So it's quite a relationship.
He has developed his own cruelty-free way of backing horses, Join Up, which is used by millions of people worldwide, and we join him to gain an insight into his groundbreaking methods.
The question comes to me a lot, what is it you love about the Mustang? Well, first of all, I love them because they're a horse. And horses can mean you no harm. They cannot contrive, they cannot lie. They're honest and true to the end. And stop. And reverse. Now I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, this was the wildest and the most dangerous Mustang that I have ever had my hands on. He broke 3 of my ribs just blasting over the top of me. And you don't want to blame him for any of that. He was just doing what a wild horse does in order to survive. He didn't know that we were intending him no harm. They always figure that they're going to be eaten by something they haven't seen before, something they don't understand, or something they've identified as a predator. And in many ways, we're all of those. So he has every right to protect himself, and now he's becoming a partner, not an adversary. All the time I was growing up, I watched my father being cruel to horses, horribly cruel to Mustang horses and even domestic horses. Killed a lot of them. It was the way they did things in Spain, and everybody here learned it from Spain. When I got out to the Mustangs, in northern Nevada principally, I found horses that all they needed was some kind of trust. All they needed was human intervention to find their needs and provide for those needs. And they were great horses. You didn't have to rope them and tie them down and break their necks and their jaws. You didn't have to do it. And I wanted to know more about why we do what we do. I wanted to know why my father did what he did. And so I wanted an education. The horses were my professors. The Mustangs were my professors. I lived with them out there. I would beg them to let me stay 2, 3, 4 weeks and to watch them interact with one another, to watch them communicate with one another, to watch them live their life in the presence of mountain lions, wolves, bears. They had to work out, as a flight animal, how do I deal with these people that want to eat my body? And there was one that I called the no-name Mustang. He didn't have a name because he came with the 150 of that particular year, and I think it was about in 1946 or 1947. And he was the first one to show me that join-up works. That if I ask him to go away and ask him to go away, and I press him away, and then I go passive and close my fingers and go looking downward on a 45-degree angle away from his line of travel, he would come to me. I'm just going to give him a little rub and just a tug here, and then I'm going to walk away, and I want him to want to be with me. Remember the definition, that moment when the horse chooses to be with you instead of away from you. That's the moment of join-up. Think of the thousands of horses that I've dealt with now, and the tens of thousands of horses that have experienced my concepts brought about by the students that I've now turned out in the world. Nobody has to strike a horse. Nobody has to tie their legs up. They just don't have to do these terrible things to them.
Today we're having a wild horse and burro adoption here at the Delta Wild Horse and Burro facility. So with the Bureau of Land Management, our appropriate management level on the range is approximately 25,000, and we are currently sitting at 72,000, so our ranges are certainly overpopulated. One of the tools that we have to manage the horses is by removal. And once we remove, we offer them up for adoption, such as what we're doing today, so that we can ensure that these horses get homes and private care.
At this facility, we get horses off the range after they've been rounded up. We let them kind of settle here, kind of calm down a little, and then after they've been here, we check them out for any health issues, and then we vaccinate, deworm, give them their brand, and then if they've been here for a little while, we also trim their feet. We will keep them sometimes a year, maybe a little more, to try to find homes for them, and then we will ship them to other facilities. We do have long-term pasture for the older ones that maybe aren't adoptable age or the best for adoption, which is usually 5 or 6 is the oldest. So we like to keep 5 and younger here because that works out best for the public. And then we are open Monday through Friday for people to walk in and adopt a horse.
I'm Rex Bigelow, and I'm from Linden, Utah.
Hugh Vale from up in Salt Lake City.
Lindell Cox, I'm from Milford, Utah. We're looking at adopting one.
I'm hoping to adopt one Mustang today.
So I've got 2 horses, neither of them are Mustangs. I've always wanted Mustangs, and I just knew that I would struggle getting past that first gentling process. I love the Americana about them. I love the never quit spirit that they have. And I think they represent a lot of what's natural inside of most of us, that you get this wild animal and then you meek it along the way and become a partner and a friend, and I think that says a lot about just America and where we've come from. Well, when I adopt these Mustangs here, I'm going to take them over to Wild West Taylor's Mustang Ranch down in Fremont, Utah, and have him help me go through that 90-day gentling process, and then from there we'll, take it up into the mountains and make some good mountain horses out of them.
Wes Taylor is a renowned horseman who's been using science to understand what happens in the horse's brain when they're backed. We join him in Fremont, Utah.
To me, the Mustangs they're a very special breed or characteristic of horse in the fact that they're this mix of all different kinds of horses, but in the end what comes through just through the natural Mother Nature's process of elimination only the strong and healthy are going to survive out there in the world. So if there's some genetic defects or some physical defects, you know, those horses don't live long out in the wild. So what we have at this point is a very hardy, strong, and a strong will to survive horse that is willing to do about anything to survive, including learning how to live with man. My journey with the Mustangs began at a time in my life when I was really confused and I didn't know who I was or what I was. And so I don't know how I came about it, but I went out and adopted 2 wild Mustangs, brought them home, and just spent a year just hanging out in the corral with those Mustangs, trying to figure out, how do we talk? How do we communicate? How do we build this relationship? How do we move this forward? And through all that, over the next number of years until now, and continue learning, these Mustangs just keep teaching me more and more about me and about me as a human. And the better I can be at that, the better I feel I can be as a horseman. So that's been my journey over the last 7 years, perfecting me through the Mustang. Probably the biggest training insights that I've found in working with the wild horses, I was introduced to a man by the name of Dr. Stephen Peters, who's a neuroscientist, a human brain surgeon, doc, and he's done some phenomenal research in horse brains and the chemical states that brain is in during different levels of stimulus or training. And once we started using the science of how the horse's brain actually works and the chemical state of minds, now our training process here, we're getting 10 times the results in half or less the time. So this science, understanding how the brain actually functions and when that learning actually happens in the horse's brain, has changed everything of how we've approached our training here at the ranch. So in a training setting with wild horses, we've got the application of pressure, and that's the motive for the horse to seek out the answer or to look for the behavior that I'm asking that horse for. So we'll have pressure, which asks the horse to find the behavior, and then we have release of pressure, which is my signal to the horse, hey, you just found the behavior, you just did what I was looking for. That's when I want to release the pressure. But then where the science comes in is from the release of pressure by me to when the horse seeks mental relief. That's when the dopamine release comes in. You'll see the horse lower its head, kind of blink its eyes, and the key factors, you'll see the horse lick and chew. And once it looks for that answer and then is rewarded with dopamine, it builds a neuron path, a dendritic path in the horse's mind where this pressure stimulus and then I did this behavior, they put those two together and then the dopamine reinforces that behavior. That's what sets the learning with the horse.
They're all different. They have all different personalities. Some are very easy to gentle, some aren't.
You know, I see hundreds and thousands of horses each year come through here, and they all have a little bit of different personalities and different little quirks about them.
You know, domestic horses are born expecting and depending upon you, and Mustangs are very independent, and so once you win their trust, they trust wholeheartedly.
My personal Mustangs that I have, you know, when he's spooked at something, he comes closer to me instead of running away. I like that bond, and that's probably the biggest thing with me.
The Mustang is your friend. Once you get him as a friend, you have a friend for life. And he will take you over the mountains, he will get you home. You can't blame the horse for anything. It's like blaming the night for being dark. It's a natural phenomenon. They can't lie. They can only respond to what we do. And if he's bad, we gotta figure out what we can do to cause him to be good and to cause him to want to be good. The Mustangs have taught me so much. Over and over again, they are everything to the horse industry as far as I'm concerned.
Why work with Mustangs? In my experience in working with the Mustangs, that Mother Nature left this little door just barely ajar, just a crack open in the horse's mind for man to enter into. And I hold that as a very honoring experience for me to be able to open that door in the horse's mind and step into that spiritual journey in working with that horse and gentling that horse and removing that fear, getting that fear out of the way in the horse's mind, so that then I can start building and creating this companionship, this relationship, this partnership with the wild horse. That's an honoring space to go into, and one that I don't take lightly. That's very special to me, that I've been gifted the ability to go in and influence this wild animal in that way. And in return from that, I feel and I see in these Mustangs, they're such a emotional and spiritual teacher. They can be, if you're open to it. They don't connect with who you think you are. You know, they don't connect with your outward image. Well, I just took a group of guys out in the desert for a 4-day backcountry men's retreat, and to take solid, burly, husky, manly men out into the backcountry and have them connect and interact with these Mustangs and have that soft, vulnerable authenticity come forth from these guys by being around these horses. It's just phenomenal work that they can do that I feel only the horse can do.